Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Global PMO Day. It's a good day indeed, and not just because we have so many of our PMO network listening to us here today, but because it's a celebration. We're celebrating the impact of project management offices around the world. Today is about connection, inspiration, and shining a light on the people, practices, and progress that power our projects and organizations forward. So whether you're a seasoned PMO leader, a passionate team member, or someone exploring this space for the first time, thank you for being here. You're part of something global, vibrant, and growing. So let's keep the energy high and the conversation rich across today. With that, let's officially kick off the Global PMO Day 2025. I would like first to start by thanking AIPMO, Dr. Robert Jocelyn, for this great idea of having this global celebration. I would like to thank our team, Ritu, who is with us on the call, and Bara and Martin behind the scene. I'm Nancy Noaimi, and I've spent my career at the intersection of culture, excellence, and purposeful leadership, working with teams and leaders and PMOs to go beyond managing projects to becoming strategic enablers of transformation. So today, I want to explore this idea with you. What if the true impact of a PMO isn't just in what it delivers, but in what it enables? So my talk today is going to be around that. In a world full of change, pressure, and complexity, PMOs must be more than guardians of governance. They must become catalysts for alignment and value creation. So whether you're leading a mature office, building from scratch, or transforming a struggling one, this session is for you. So let's dive in. Our first session today here is about where do PMOs thrive? And it's about a global comparison of maturity and opportunities for improvement for PMOs. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to walk you through this topic. First, with a small introduction, talking a little bit about the PMOMI model, and sharing with you some global PMO maturity scores from the research we've done, and improvement opportunities and the way forward from what we've learned from these findings. So let me start by introducing myself. I'm a culture and excellence consultant. I worked for years in integrated management systems, Shinko model for enterprise excellence, government excellence models, continuous improvement systems. And lastly, for the last couple of years, I'm working on PMO maturity and impact and trying to look at that perspective of maturity and impact of PMOs and how we can learn from the experience of excellence models and the excellent work that has been happening for many years in different areas and how we can bring that to the PMO world. I work with clients across the globe, big clients like IKEA, DP World, Expo 2020, in different sectors. I have 25 plus years of experience. I have 2 masters, one in bioengineering and total quality management, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in project management. I had non-executive roles as a board member in different associations, and my motto is excellence is a habit. And I like to really focus on excellence in everything I do. And that's why I started the Excellence Foresight podcast. So today is about the PMO world. And we can't really talk about that without talking about the PMOMI model. And this is a model I've been working with Dr. Robert Jocelyn, founder of IPMO, for the last couple of years. And it's a model that looks at assessing PMOs, assessing their maturity and impact. And I wanted to start with these 3 questions here today. Why is it important to assess the current state of a business unit or a PMO or even an entire organization? And that's what I've learned from the excellence models I worked with. We often look at assessing this current state of an organization, or if a model or if a system that we have, and what are the learning that we need to get out of that and how we can improve it. So that definitely translates into the PMO world. And it's important to look at the current state of the PMO and how the PMO is operating, what's its maturity level, what's the impact it's providing. And the second question, why aren't all PMOs thriving? Why we have challenges? Why every time we are in a meeting, we talk about the PMOs, the PMO asks us, the PMO team asks us, our people, our management, they don't see the value of the PMO. How can we demonstrate that value? So why is it a question? Why it's something that we're not able to achieve? And I think the last question I wanted to talk about here today is why are both maturity and impact important for PMOs? So we have models that look at maturity, but what about the impact of PMO? How can we measure that? How can we really demonstrate that the PMO is having an impact on the organization and on the project management itself? So there's a lot of questions that we can try to answer in different meetings by brainstorming together, but definitely we need tools to do that. We need structured methodologies to help us assess the current state of PMOs, help us see where are the gaps, and how we can take these gaps to formulate solutions and to formulate improvements for PMOs. So I want briefly to talk to you here today about the PMOMI model. The PMOMI model is developed based on research that was conducted by AI PMO and Dr. Robert Joslin and across many years. And at the end, we came up with this model, which is a good tool. It has 24 different service domains in it. It's a tool that has been designed for single and multiple PMOs. It's a principle-based maturity and impact assessment tool with 6 tiers across 15 different teams. We have a lot of checkpoints that look at those criteria and success factors that are needed for the PMO. And we see that we have 250 plus success factors that we look at when we do the assessment. Now, the assessment, we have 6 different tiers. The first 4 looks at the single PMOs, and the tier 5, 6 looks at the multiple PMOs. And the assessment findings that I'm going to be sharing with you today here are from the tier 1. Now, tier 2, 3, and 4 are assessments that build over each other. They are for different types of organizations. They match the needs of all sectors because they have a very comprehensive set of success criteria that are measured as part of the questions that the assessors ask, what they do, the documents they review, and everything that's being assessed during those assessment days on site. This is just a high-level representation of the single PMO assessment levels, which we call tier 1 to tier 4. So we look here at different things. I'm sharing this one with you here before sharing the findings, because this will help you understand what are the elements that we look at and understand more the findings. So when we look at assessing a PMO, we look at the principles that are within the PMO. We look at the near tacit knowledge that has been exchanged and how the PMO development is happening, how the development of people, of the PM methodology, of the awareness of people, their knowledge is being structured within the work of the PMO. We look at the service gaps, we look at domains of control, influence, and concerns. And you see that these are different from tier 2, 3, and 4. So we build over these as we move to the different tiers in the assessment. And when we look at the assessment of the PMO, it's important to understand the context of the PMO, understand all of these elements, and at the end come up with findings that are meaningful, that are really tailor-made to the PMO, and that are going to be used for improvements of these PMOs areas that are important to support the improvement of results, alignments, and culture, developing culture of improvement within the PMO. So the tier 5 and 6 is what we call multiple PMO assessment. So we look at multiple PMOs within the organization. Now I'm sharing with you here high level some visuals from our PMO assessment reports and findings. So we look at the 24 service domains, but we don't look at all of them if they're not applied by the PMO. We look at those that are meaningful, the PMO, that the PMO is working within, and the services that is providing to its stakeholders. So we look at all of these elements. Our reports are very comprehensive. They look at enterprise alignment, they look at near tacit triangulation, domain of control, influence of and concern within the PMO. We look at the details of all the service domains, and we do that using benchmarking. We benchmark internally the PMO. We look at the benchmark within these service domains, but we look also how the PMO benchmarks against others in our database. So it's the benchmarking is very predominant in what we're doing. We look at providing value by looking at sharing practices and what we have learned across the years from the good practices of PMOs with others. Now, I will start now talking a little bit about the core of my presentation today, the global maturity scores. And we call them global because the tier 1 assessment is done across the globes. We do these assessments during our master classes and different activities during the trainings. And we try to get input from people who share from their own knowledge about their PMO, the status of the maturity within that PMO. And it's a subset. It's a subset of questions that they look at. It's not as comprehensive as the full assessment, but it gives us an indication of the maturity of the PMO in these countries and for those PMOs that are being assessed. I chose here just 5 countries: Colombia, Kuwait, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, to share with you some of the findings from the assessment, the Tier 1 assessment, and the differences we see between PMOs in these different countries. Now, these PMOs are from different sectors. We don't see the sectors here in the presentation because we focused more on the countries. We focused on grouping those findings by these 5 countries. And here we have high number of respondents, which gives us the confidence of the findings
Nancy,
that we...
I'm sorry, are you sharing the screen? Because I don't see it now.
You were sharing it, you were seeing it before?
No. I'm not sure if you can check.
Oh, sorry, I thought because I've been sharing slides since 15 minutes, it disabled somehow. And now?
Yes, it's fine now. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Ritu, can you see it now?
Yes, Nancy.
Oh, okay. It got disabled somehow. Okay, so sharing now the findings from the 5 countries for the maturity scores that we've had. So we are talking here about Colombia, Kuwait, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. So the score we've seen from the Tier 1 assessment on a scale 1 to 5, Colombia scored 2, Kuwait scored 2.5, Poland 3, Saudi Arabia 2.5, United Arab Emirates 3. These are self-assessments that talks about the 24 service domains. So the respondents have shared their scores, and this is what we achieved. So I'm going to move one by one into the different elements that we have in our assessment, and I'm going to share with you some of the results here. So if you look at my screen here, we're talking about the PMO life cycle. We know that the PMOs have life cycles, and our assessment is based on different sections. So the first section talks about the conceptualization of the PMOs. The second one is about the planning of the PMO. The third one is about the execution. And number 4 is the safeguarding of the future. And if you look at the profiles of these 5 countries, so we had Colombia, Kuwait, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, we see that most of the scores achieved are between 2 and 3. 3.5 maturity. So this tells us that there's certain kind of consistency across the PMO life cycle and the maturity of that life cycle development across these 5, the respondent in these 5 countries. So the total scores achieved also are between 2 to 3. The maturity of the PMOs, the average maturity of PMOs within these countries is also around 2 to 3, level 2 to 3. So if we look at this one, we see that the different countries and different PMOs in different countries had similar profiles somehow. It's when we start looking into the details, we start looking at those differences and which section has been more mature and compared to others and in which country. So we start digging deeper into those elements of the PMO services. The second slide here talks about strategic alignment. When we designed the PMOMI model, we looked at the strategic alignment. We looked at the elements that are required for the success of the PMO and aligning the project with the strategy of the organization. And we grouped them into 5 key themes: governance, integration and oversight, leadership, sponsorship, standardization, artifacts, and tools. These were the 5 high-level themes that we had grouped, and we had different set of questions for those ones. If you look here at the screen, again, it's a comparison between the 5 countries that are being represented here. So in terms of governance, we see again the maturity is between 2 to 3.5. The integration and oversight is a little bit more mature. It's 2.5 to 3.5 because the PMO role is mainly to have oversight over the project delivery. And that's why I think the score has been a little bit higher in this one. We look at leadership sponsorship. We see, for example, that in Colombia and in Kuwait, the score is lower than others when it comes to leadership sponsorship of the PMO itself. So that's kind of indication about the need for maybe better support in terms of sponsorship for the PMO. Standardization and artifact, it varies little bit between the different countries. And if you look at the tools also, there's more variation. I think with Colombia, PMOs are scoring lower than the others. Now, our PMO assessment, PMOMI model has 24 service domains. And one of the things which is very important here is to look at how these service domains really work well together or doesn't work well together, and how is the impact on the PMO. So I'm not going to share all the examples for you. I'm going to share a little bit the first example here. For example, if we take the problem where we see project deliverables are often delayed and stakeholders are dissatisfied due to lack of coordination and misaligned expectation. These two comes from two service domains, integration management and stakeholder management. And if we look at the scores of maturity of these service domains and we see a lower score, this will tell us it's something that definitely something needs to be done there. Now, the outcome, seamless service integration or aligning stakeholder expectation for successful outcomes. This is what we're trying to achieve. So this tells us how to go, what road to take to be able to achieve this outcome. So we start looking at the gaps and we start identifying areas for improvement within these to be able to support the PMOs. So if we look at all of this, there's a lot of problems that are generated or are related to more than one service domain. So when we start looking at all of these combinations, we can better find the root cause of the issues. We can better find the cause and effect relationships and try to design solutions that helps the PMO deliver better in all of these areas, and that definitely improves its maturity. So there's a lot of examples that we can take or can use, but we're gonna focus more on the findings here of the Tier 1 assessment. So if I look at the representation by service domains, like I shared with you, we have 24 service domains going from stakeholder management, integration management, going to PPM tools management, into PMO self-development, innovation, quality, looking at the core activities of the PMO in terms of portfolio management, demand, and schedule. So again, here we see a profile which is always between, I think, 1.5 and 3.5 in terms of maturity. The areas that scored highest in this are schedule management, risk management, supplier management, capability management, configuration management, administrative management, and issue management, which are things that are really, if we look at the PMOs, we see that more and more PMOs are working around these activities. These are the services they provide. So it's very obvious that a high score is consistent with what we see within the PMOs. The lowest score achieved is on the portfolio management, which was very, very surprising. Because when we talk about PMOs, this is one of the things that we often talk about. They manage portfolios, but that score was low. So I think the success criteria are the things that are maybe not provided or not available within those PMOs. So that's the gap that needs to be worked on. How do we make sure that they are more successful, more mature in terms of portfolio management? So we see a lot of profiles like that across the different findings and across the different countries and what we've seen. I want to dig deeper a little bit into the individual service domains. So we have 24 service domains, and just sharing with you here the profiles of maturity within those 5 countries. Again, Colombia, Kuwait, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. And then the integration management we see here, it's kind of 2.5 to 3, which is kind of level maturity 2. The stakeholder management is lower, like starting in Colombia than the other countries. Communication management, again, we see them between 2.5 to 3.5, and governance is the highest. That's indication of the focus of the PMOs, which is mostly on developing the governance framework for the work that's being happen. The service domains, Ritu, which one I'm sharing, the 2 screens or the big screen, the 1 screen?
I can see slide number 22.
Okay. So, so if we look here at the other services, so we have the frameworks and methodologies, PPM tools management, and consultancy. So here we see similar, I think, profiles. If you look at, so they are kind of mid-matured compared to others. Even consultancy, which is something that we don't see in all PMOs, but when it's delivered, is something that I think is getting to a certain level of maturity, because this is the support that the PMO gives to other stakeholders within the organization. We talk here about the administrative management, innovative management, knowledge management, asset management, and PMO self-development. So again, we see variations. We see the highest scores are in Kuwait and Poland and in United Arab Emirates. And this fluctuation tells us also about the status of the PMOs within these countries. I would like now to go into a different view that helps you in a different way understand also the maturity of PMOs across these countries. This graph here has more than those 4 or 5 countries. It's had all the respondents within our database, so it's a little bit more global than just the representation, the 5 countries we had earlier. And the yellow, it's the score, which is the level 3 score. The orange is a level 2 score. So level 3 score is means 2.5 and 3.5. And we see more of the 24 service domains. We have 21 of them that are in yellow in level 3, which is kind of a good representation of the maturity of the PMOs across the globe. And that tells us that the PMO, if we look at all of these service domains and we look across the globe, there's a certain maturity. They're not yet there at level 4 or 5. There's a lot of work to be done. None of them is at level 4. So all of them are level 3. So there's a lot of work that needs to be then conducted still for PMOs to move to that maturity bracket. If we go again now to the country views here, so we have Colombia. We see Colombia is more in the orange compared to the other countries which you're gonna be seeing. So Colombia, the service domains maturity is level 2. The ones which have high maturity are the ones in yellow, and it's a maturity of 2.6, 2.8. So it is for integration, it is for frameworks and methodologies and schedule management. It's surprising to see integration scoring high, but I think maybe they're doing those, the integration without maybe calling it integration. The success factors that they covered are all for integration. So, but framework and methodologies and schedule management, I think these are some basic things that needs to be there for PMOs to be able to provide support for their stakeholders. So it's normal to have those ones with higher maturity than others. If we look at Kuwait profile, we see more yellow. The PMOs in Kuwait, we see more yellow than orange. So the orange are the level 2, the yellow are the level 3. The low scores, maturity scores, are in portfolio, risk and capability and capacity management. This is an indication of the areas that needs to be strengthened. The other are having higher maturity. Poland, for example, if we look at Poland, we have more orange than Kuwait. It's just by, I think, 2 or 3 more service domains who are in level 2 compared to the others. But the scores are quite good. So we have a lot of service domains maturity around 3.1. So it's quite a good profile of mature PMOs. And when we had a discussion with them, I think we saw a lot of good work happening. They don't necessarily cover all in the same maturity, all the services of the PMOs, but there's a good foundation in there. Saudi Arabia, we see more, I think, orange service domains. This is just a self-assessment. Just it's important to, again, emphasize it's a self-assessment. This is where the PMO team has assessed their own PMOs. So we see here the areas that could really be strengthened are the ones in orange. So we can see PMO self-development, asset management, knowledge management, innovation management, capability and capacity, supplier, quality, portfolio, benefits management. All of these things, maybe there's something that the PMOs have started to focusing on, but they definitely need to spend more time putting the foundation for them, looking at the success criteria, looking what are the things to improve, what are the existing gaps, and how to make sure that they strengthen those as they continue working with the PMO. United Arab Emirates, again, it's a different profile. We see more maturity in terms of PMOs, in terms of the score achieved, and in terms of the service domains covered. The lowest scores are for capability, capacity, benefits, and innovation management. And this is also quite a good representation of the PMOs within assess PMOs within the country. It's important to mention here that we had at least 40, 50 different PMOs responding to these assessments. So this is a profile which is kind of representative of those PMOs in these countries. Now I come to almost to the end of my presentation. I want to spend little time on the way forward. Now we see from the assessment, from what we've seen earlier, that we have a lot of variations when it comes to the service domains. We have 24 service domains that cover most of the elements that are important for the PMOs to have to focus on, especially if these things are not provided by any other entity within the organization. So when we talk innovation, when we talk quality, it's not necessarily, some organizations maybe doesn't have these well-established functions. So it's important that the PMOs start working around these to be able to provide better value that supports the project management and project management teams deliver, I think, better project outcomes. So when we look at the 24 service domains, not every PMO will have those 24. Not every PMO needs a 24 or is required to work with the 24. So we look at the areas which are important for that PMO within its own context, and we look at the things that are needed for improvement. Now, I just want to focus on what we've learned so far from assessing different PMOs, from looking at the tier 1 assessment and looking at what are the things that are required. I listed here some of like 6 key elements which are very, very important. Strategic alignment. Now, when we talk strategic alignment, we're talking about the PMO and how the PMO can align projects with the strategy of the organization. It's important to have that alignment because otherwise the question will always be there. How can the PMO provide value? The value the PMO provides should be linked to the strategic objectives of the organization. The PMO sits at a certain level, high level in the organization, and he will be able to do this kind of alignments. So it's very important to have that strategic alignment. How to do that? First, you need to understand what's the strategy of the organization, what are the objectives, what are the things that the stakeholders are focusing on, and put a strong methodology to make that alignment and to see that, to be able to link the projects to the strategic objectives. And that's one of the things that the PMO should be looking at. And PMO thriving are able to do that more than others. PMO who are providing value are able to demonstrate that value to the organization, to their sponsor, to the senior management of the organization. So that's one of the key things that the PMO need to start looking at, is how to make sure that there is alignment with the strategic objectives of the organization. The problem is when no one knows the role of the PMO initially. What are the things that the PMO needs to be doing? What's the role of the PMO? Why is he a catalyst or not a catalyst? So that's the first question that the PMOs need to look or start answering, is what is the role of the PMO in strategic alignment and how can this be done? Second point is looking at the service offering and the PMO mandate. Now, we have a lot of times where that's also a big question mark in organization. What is the PMO mandate? What are the services offered by the PMO? And how can we manage stakeholders' expectations? So it's important to look at what the PMO is doing now, assess the success of that, assess the gaps, look at what are the additional things that the PMO needs to be doing, considering the strategic objectives of the organization and the positioning of the PMO, and looking at its own mandates. And we talk a lot about inwards and outwards. It's important for the PMO mandate to look at all of these things. How is it going to provide value internally to the stakeholders within the organization? And if there's any support that it could also provide outside. And that's where the definition of a mandate of the PMO is critical. We don't see this written in a lot of organizations. The mandate of the PMO is not clear, it's not written down. So how can a PMO operate without having that mandate written down? So it's something very important to do after looking at positioning the PMO. And from the mandate, we draw the service offerings. What are the services that the PMO will be delivering within the organization? And that gives clarity, and that needs to draw also from the stakeholders' expectations. So a dialogue within the organization is very important. What are the stakeholders' expectations, and what are the strategic objectives of the organization? How does the sponsor see the PMO and align all of this and provide a clear mandate for the PMO? And this is really a gap in a lot of organizations, a lot of PMOs we've seen. Balancing flexibility and structure. This is also another key thing to look at, is We ask the PMOs to be the custodian of governance, policies, procedures, but they need to be flexible. They need to meet the changing needs of the organization, of strategic objectives, a lot of changes across. So how the PMO can be flexible, but also have a good structure, rigid structure, foundational structure to be able to provide value. So that the start is really to start looking at the structure of the PMO and looking how to make it the existing structure, how to strengthen it, what are the needs of the organization, how can this be really improved, and then look how to provide that flexibility within the procedures that are given to the PMO. So there should be a kind of a balance between flexibility and structure of the PMO, and hybrid models are very important. They enable teams to adapt quickly and deliver reliable outcomes. All this can only take place if there's a clear understanding and comprehensive understanding of the existing PMO mandate, of its way of working, of its structure, of the needs, and be able to tailor a solution that is provide that flexibility. And that's a big question I think that the PMO struggle with is they need to be rigid, they need to be controlling, they need to have structure, governance, and all that, but in the same time, they need to be able to adapt and be flexible. So how can this go hand by hand without losing any of the good elements and good services that the PMO is delivering? Point number 4, building PMO and PM capabilities. It's all about learning, continuous improvement, innovation, prioritizing knowledge sharing. The PMO, if they don't evolve, the PMO teams, if they don't keep abreast of changes, of what's happening and the best practices that are being there, adopting maybe technology, they won't be able to meet the future needs of the organization and their stakeholders. So they need to strengthen the learning process, the continuous improvement process, the innovation process, and prioritize knowledge sharing within their team and with their stakeholders. So that's something which was sometimes overlooked, people don't focus on, and it's one of the key things that will help PMOs become better and strengthen their position within their organization. Integrating new technologies, leveraging AI, there's a lot of talk around that. There's a lot of things that could be done, and integrating those in the tools that the PMO is using, making sure that the PMO has the required technologies and be able to advise also on the use of AI for project management. Encouraging continuous improvement and self-development within PMOs can lead to sustained success. This is one of the things which I personally believe, and it's very important, I think, for any PMO or any entity in the organization to look at continuous improvement and self-development. You can't really stagnate. If you are a stagnant PMO, you're not going to improve. So understanding where you are, understanding the gaps, understanding also how to move forward and what are the needs of the organization now and in the future are very important. And solutions for the PMO needs to be tailored based on that. The plans of the PMO to continuously improve for trainings, for certifications, for self-development has to go hand by hand with how the PMO is operating now and how it needs to improve in the future to meet those strategic objectives of the organization. So there's a lot of things that the PMO could focus on and should be doing, should be improving. And if those things are well developed, they will lead to certain sustained success in the future. But it also goes back to the people, it goes all back to the PMO, the sponsorship that it gets, the support that it gets from the management, but also looking at all of these elements and putting them together in a nice way, a nice aligned way. With this, I would like to thank you all for listening. I do apologize for not sharing the slides at the beginning. I thought I was. And thank you very much. And I'm ready for questions. If you have any questions for me, too.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for the fruitful session. And we truly appreciate your insights and the valuable guidance you shared. There's one question. It's why is it important for PMO to benchmark against other PMO in the same country or even globally?
Yes, thank you for this question. And I think it's very important to benchmark globally and within the country. Within the country, because of also certain common challenges and the culture of the country itself, the focus of the country and the ecosystem itself. Having first benchmarking within a country is important to see the similarities, to see there's common challenges sometimes that are there, which could help the PMO also maybe get more confidence that it's not him alone who has these challenges, but it also could tell him if others have identified solutions, have better maturity because they were able to do things differently. So having a local benchmark or within country benchmark is important. Having also a global benchmark is very important because it also tells us what's happening in the world, what the status of the PMOs across the globe, and that status should help also PMOs see how how they position currently, but also if they have plans to grow globally, to be more competitive across the globe, if they have plans for global recognition, that will help them also see what's the status of PMOs across the globe. So learning from others is key in both condition, in both situations, I would say. When we do benchmarking is really to see what we're doing and see what others are doing or what we are not doing and try to improve and match what the global, I think, maturity of the PMOs. So that benchmarking is very important because it helps, I think, the PMOs see where they position locally, globally. And if you are a group of companies, you can do it within your companies. So that's also, I think, another way to look at benchmarking, internal or external benchmarking. Thank you, Bara, for the question.
Thank you, Nancy. There's one more question. What are the direct benefits of PMO assessment? And I would just like to, before Nancy answers, I would just like to say if attendees have any questions, you can type in the chat, please.
So direct benefits of assessments are benchmarking and assessment are plenty. When you use a model and you have certain criteria and you're doing assessment against those criteria, by itself, it's an eye opener. It's gonna give you directly what are the things that you're not doing and maybe that you should be doing. So it's a direct benefit of identifying the gaps. And then the second, I think, benefit would be to be able to act on these gaps, to put it in a simple way. So you need to first know where you are, identify the gaps you have and the areas for improvement. And second is to identify the improvement plan that you need to put in place to be able to respond to those, I think, gaps and close them. So the whole exercise of assessment is very important. The direct benefit for the organization first is to know, is the knowledge of where they are, the knowledge of the score achieved, the knowledge of the good practices. When we do assessment, it's not just to identify areas for improvements. We look also at the good practices that the organization is doing to acknowledge that. And also we look at the areas for improvement. So having a look from outside, especially when you do a third-party assessment from outside, is very important because it helps you get a clear picture of where you are. And a lot of times we hear from companies, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know about this. So that's a great eye opener. Once you determine your status, you determine your current state, then you can really look at the improvements. How do you make use of this information, which is in your hands now, to be able to generate improvements? And that will help you to have a clear roadmap, to have an understanding of what are the things to do and how to do these things to be able to generate better results and improve performance. So there's a great benefit in this, especially if the internal team within the organization doesn't have the knowledge maybe to do that. So having someone from outside with experience and different practices helps to get to a different level of maturity and performance also across.
Thank you, Nancy. It was a very insightful session. We'll just wait for one more minute to see if we have more questions coming in.
Great. And Rita, I would like to maybe close the session by saying that we will start publishing, I think, those the results of the findings that we have more publicly. And then this will give organization also an idea about how do they compare, so they can do the self-assessment exercise on their own, see how do they compare with others. And when you start looking at the criteria, like I said earlier, it's an eye opener of, do I have this? I don't have it. So a lot of people, by doing the self-assessment, start already doing a certain improvement, internal improvement. So going through these exercises is important. And if anybody would like to have maybe access to the self-assessment, we're happy to give it to him. So there's a report that's generated directly from the system that gives them the gaps based on their self-assessment. I think that would be very helpful for organizations. If we have no more questions, then I'm going to stop sharing. I would like to thank you both for supporting me in this session, and thank you.